Harley Davidson has just announced the 2022 FXLRS and FXLRST. My reaction and how that impacts my 2021 Iron 883 in just a moment. So here we have it. Harley Davidson releases the 2022 new model update, and it includes some refreshed models, some new color paint, and the new Lowrider S and Lowrider ST. I was really amused and slightly put off by some of the misinformation put out there by prolific Motovlog channels on their first reaction to the new model release. And I'm hoping this video will clear up some of that misinformation, but at the very least lets me know that I gave the right and correct information out to my viewers. The reason I'm making this video is not because I'm interested in creating a video that's trendy right now. It's because I have to make a decision by February on what I'm going to trade my 883 in for if I want to get full equity value of my 883 under my dealer's promise. It's called the Seminal Promise. I'll flash it up here on the screen. It means that if I trade in my 883 by the day I bought it in 1 year's time, I'll get full value of what I paid for it towards a Harley Davidson big twin motorcycle. And the Lowrider S and the Lowrider ST is the most considerable model that I've thought about getting and trading in for the 883. In fact, I was so stoked and hyped to get one of these. I actually visited the dealer yesterday to see what they had in stock and talk about the Seminal Promise and get some numbers put together. So let's get right into my reaction on the Lowrider S and Lowrider ST that Harley Davidson put out during the launch this past week, and go over some of the features and benefits and new things that are happening with the Lowrider models. So the new Lowrider S is available in two colors, Vivid Black and the Gunship Gray trim. The Gunship Gray trim will cost you a little bit more. One of the first things that you notice that's been improved for the 2022 Lowrider S over previous models is its power plant. It's been upgraded to the 117 cubic inch Milwaukee 8 from the 114. Previously, the 117 was only seen in CVO models, and CVO models for this year are also with the 117. This means that peak torque numbers have increased from 119 foot-pounds of torque at 3,000 RPM to now 125 foot-pounds of torque at 3,500 RPM. So a little bit higher in the rev range, you get your increased capacity. The next improvement that you're going to see on the Lowrider S is the instrument console. No longer is it located on the tank like in previous models, but for 2022, Harley Davidson has moved the gauges to the handlebars, which is a throwback to the FXR and Dyna days where you had on the FXDT, FXRT, the gauges traditionally on the handlebars. And this has been a modification where some out there in the scene have removed the gauges out of the tank, put a blank plate on the tank, and then relocated them to top of the handlebars. And this is the motor company seeing the trend out there and listening to their customers, because everybody has been asking for this. It's very inconvenient to glance down, take your eyes off the road to see your speed or information that's on the gauges. So this is a much welcomed improvement for the 2022 lineup. However, the technology in this gauge is very similar to what I have on my Sportster Iron 883 parts and accessories catalog speedo tachometer that I purchased. Many folks out there had speculated that the gauge cluster would be that of the Sportster S. However, that is not the case. As you can see right here, I visited the Harley Davidson dealership yesterday and sat on a Lowrider S, and this is the actual footage from that visit, and it is not the gauge that comes with the Sportster S. The good news is that it does come standard with the Lowrider S, but it's no more technology that you would get on a Softail Fat Bob. In fact, it's the identical instrument panel, just relocated on top of the riser. The next change that you're going to find on Lowrider S is the increased ride height. We got an inch higher stance this year, with the rear travel being consistent with what's happening out there in the modification scene in order to get more performance out of your lowrider when riding on twisties in the canyons and the mountains. This isn't new for the motor company. The Fat Bob has had this 1 inch higher stance since its inception, but what we're seeing is that the performance features found on the Fat Bob are now transferring into the Lowrider S as well. It makes you wonder if sales of the Fat Bob will decline and the Lowrider S increase commensurately. Does that mean the end of the Fat Bob as Harley's performance softail model in the lineup? Other items to note: the quarter fairing comes back. The exhaust system has been modified and updated for the new Lowrider S. But interesting to note, they didn't offer from the factory a 2-into-1 exhaust solution like they do on the Fat Bob, and they did not include cruise control. Right now, cruise control modules are on an 18-week back order because of the microchip shortage plaguing the world at this moment. Now, the good news is the Lowrider S is only $500 more than last year's model. Last year's model had the 114, this has the 117, so for $500 you're getting 3 more cubic inches of power, the relocated gauge, and the higher stance with the higher shock. Parts and accessories wise, no need to run out and get a bunking bar. Harley has introduced the flat out bar. Now it places higher on the chassis than the bunking bar, so it really can't do double duty as a footrest on longer trips. With the mid controls, which is common with the Lowrider S models of the past and is retained here, you would put on the bunking bar and it would do double duty as a footrest on longer trips. So with the flat out bar, it mounts up higher and is just there for safety in case the bike tips over at low speed maneuvers. The Lowrider FXLRST is the motor company's response to the growing trend of retrofitting FXR and FXRP fairings to Dynas and old FXR motorcycles. The FXLRST includes bags, formerly of the Sport Glide, which was discontinued for this year. The Sport Glide bags have been added to the Lowrider to complete the touring package. The Sport Glide bags on the Lowrider ST are identical to those of the Sport Glide in size and capacity. However, they've been lifted 2 inches above where the Sport Glide had them, so you can get down and dirty in the twisties and corners up in the mountain. Also included is cruise control module that you won't find on the Lowrider S, but it's on the T model. Besides touring capacity, the biggest difference between the Lowrider S and the Lowrider ST is the instrument gauge. The T model does not get the same gauge as the S model. The T model gets the gauge identical to that which you would find on the Street Bob and the Softail Standard. Why this is, no one knows. If you'd like to speculate on this feature difference, feel free to type in some comments below. I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Personally, I feel that the gauge that comes with the Lowrider S is better and more favorable to the rider than the LCD readout that will be coming with the T model. The FXLRST fairing is vented. It has 3 venting areas to reduce buffeting. The FXLRST fairing is a new design inspired by the old FXRT and FXRP fairings. Overall, I feel the motor company did a great job on producing this model and reacting to the trend that's out there in the customizing market. Accessory wise, in addition to the flat out bar that we've already discussed, the motor company has available a taller windshield to give you 4 inches additional height in blocking the wind, and also a Rockford Fosgate soundbar that can be installed inside the fairing. The Rockford Fosgate audio system operates off Bluetooth from your phone or smart device and also works with the Harley Davidson app. The Rockford Fosgate audio system comprises of a left and right component speaker set with 5¼ inch mid-bass driver and a 1 inch neodymium tweeter. There is no subwoofer in the system as the Rockford Fosgate system is tuned down to 100 Hertz, so you won't be thumping down the road, but it is designed with a 250 watt amp, so you get 125 watts per side, which the motor company says is enough for you to hear the sound through a full-faced helmet. We'll just have to see about that. So the T model improves upon the Lowrider S with the fairing, which is frame mounted, the LCD readout on the handlebar, the Sport Glide carryover bags, and cruise control to complete the mini bagger package. You're going to pay a few $1,000s more for the privilege, but looking at the value and what it would cost to retrofit all of these accessories on top of a Lowrider S, or to create your own mini bagger from a Dyna chassis or previous year Lowrider S, the value is definitely there. So with this launch and for 2022, the Lowrider S and Lowrider ST, I think the motor company had a direct hit by creating the T model to satisfy those of us out there looking for a mini bagger solution. Price point wise for Lowrider S, I think getting a 117 for only $500 more than a 114 from the previous years is an excellent value. And moving the gauge up on the dash is definitely something that everybody's been asking for. However, I feel the motor company missed on the following things. I think that the Lowrider S, Lowrider chassis, even with the 117, is not the most powerful option in the Harley Davidson lineup. That's going to go to the Sportster S. I feel the tech, it's low tech. The Sportster S again gets the nod for the most technology on a cruiser from Harley Davidson. I think that cruise control should be on the FXLRS and not just the T model. I think they've also missed out on immediate availability for the FXLRST. Is it a coincidence that the cruise control module is back ordered for 18 weeks, which would put that into May, meaning they'll fulfill the first batch of cruise control modules for the FXLRST and then release the cruise controls modules into the parts catalog customers after that? It makes you wonder. Personally, for me, I tried to place a deposit yesterday on the touring model and they wouldn't accept my money. They said in the state of Florida that a deposit doesn't mean anything and that you could back out at any point. Well, yeah, that's fair if you want to change your mind, but the dealership is only interested in securing your money against a VIN. So the product has to be in their facility and assigned a VIN and received in their inventory system, and then they can sell it to you. Otherwise, if there's no VIN associated with it, they're not going to accept the deposit. Personally, I thought this was kind of unbalanced and not a win-win and fair solution for ordering a motorcycle that you're really interested in. And of course, with my situation that I have to make a decision on what I want to trade in for by February, that rules out the FXLRST for me. The dealership was very interested though in selling me one of the two FXLRSs that they have in stock. I said I'd think about it. I think Harley Davidson missed on not providing LED indicators for the front and rear. Yes, it comes with a Daymaker headlight and the tail light's also LED, but come on Harley Davidson, it's 2022. Let's make all of the lights LED. As far as ergonomics, fit and finish, when you're sitting on the motorcycle, the Lowrider chassis, you sit up higher than you would on a Street Bob or a Softail Standard. You sit up higher than you would on a full-size bagger. The seat, it has a little bit of lumbar support in the back, so it kind of keeps you tucked in. So when you hit the throttle, you're not flying back. It fares favorably to the Fat Bob Ergos. The difference being with the Lowrider S and T, you're looking at mid controls, and the Fat Bob, you're looking at forward controls. And my final point on the Lowrider that I feel that the motor company missed out on was some of the fit and finish trim items. For instance, right on the tank bib, they have this exposed screw, and it really looks like the bike's unfinished, that you have to pop in, a cap in it. So I think they need to bust a cap in this tank bib when they come out of the factory and make it look finished and not some type of work in progress. As far as the production of the launch video, I thought Harley did a really good job this year. Very straightforward, didn't drag it out. A little bit of salesmanship going on. The exhaust notes during the video were obviously artificially created because there is no stock exhaust system on a Harley that sounds as good as it did on that video. In fact, I had the salesperson turn on the Lowrider S for me, and this is what it sounds like. This is what it sounded like on the video. So Harley, come on, give your customers a little bit more credit for their intelligence. The That wraps up my thoughts on the Lowrider S and the Lowrider ST for 2022 model release. That leaves only one question unanswered. So how does this impact my 2021 Iron 83, the Snakester? It really doesn't. The Snakester's going to stay. Woohoo! We'll see you next time. Oh, hey, you made it to the end of the video. Thanks very much. Be sure to like and subscribe and ring that bell for notifications. We'll see you next time.